大家好，我是老吴。本期节目和大家分享著名历史学家王賡武教授的一段访谈精华。王教授是国际上鼎鼎大名的历史学家，是研究中国历史和海外华人的顶级权威。他当过好几年香港大学的校长，他在印尼出生，后来在新加坡、澳洲都待过，可以说一辈子都在东西方之间穿梭。所以他分析中国既有深厚的历史感，又有开阔的国际视野，听起来就特别有分量。这段内容非常有料，直接切入了一个很多人都会关心的问题：中国在习近平主席领导下，权力看得越来越集中，对经济、对社会活力是好是坏，未来会怎么走？王教授是研究历史的，看问题特别注重追根溯源。他先是分析了为什么习主席要搞强力反腐，要集中权力。他认为这背后有深刻的原因，主要是为了救党，稳住局面，是吸取了苏联解体的教训。但他也指出了其中的矛盾和代价。一方面，党要管一切，要稳定；另一方面，经济发展又离不开市场活力，离不开企业家。这两者怎么平衡？王教授坦诚地说，这是一个巨大的挑战，尤其是在管得比较紧的时候，经济活力确实会受到影响。不过，他也提到了中国人的巨大潜力。那么，最终中国能不能克服这些困难，找到那个既要稳定又要活力的平衡点？王教授在这段话的结尾给出了一个带有前提条件的判断。接下来咱们一起听听这位智慧老人的分析和判断。
I want to further talk about China, because some China watchers believe that China is entering into one of its most uncertain and perilous periods as well, while the US is also facing so many disruptions. They are talking about presidency's consolidation of power through the removal of term limits, mandatory retirement ages, along with economic challenges like local government debt, struggling property market, crackdown on key industries. Do you agree with this assessment of China's current situation, that it is actually in a very uncertain and perilous period as well?
I think the fundamental thing is that all countries worry about their security, their own safety, and the stability of their own central government. China is no different from any other country. And from Xi Jinping's point of view, the question was very simple. Before he came to power, he was observing how China was becoming corrupt. And the corruption is not just a corruption of the business people, but the corruption within the Chinese Communist Party itself. And it was really quite extraordinary how quickly the Chinese Communist leaders had become corrupt. Not only the political leaders of the Central Committee and the Politburo and the Standing Committee, but even in the People's Liberation Army, which is a branch of the Communist Party. So the Communist Party was being corrupted by the fact that they were entering a capitalist system in which it was, without enough checks and balances, it was possible to be corrupt until the whole system is corrupt. You could not get anything done without bribing somebody, or not calling it a bribe, but using gifts or other terminology to enable things to be done. And that degree of corruption meant that nobody was doing it for the country's interests, but doing it for their own personal interests or their group's interests. At least this was what Xi Jinping saw. And I noted that when he first came in, and many other people have noted that too, his first concern was the survival of the Communist Party itself. And his concern, he took the example of the Soviet Union. He said, why did the Soviet Communist Party fail? Because of corruption. The leadership had lost their sense of purpose. They lost their commitment to the revolution that they fought for. They lost their support for the ideals that they fought the revolution died for. And they all become privately rich and seeking more benefits for themselves. And therefore the Soviet Communist Party splintered into different factions and eventually just self-destructed. So he asked the Chinese Communist Party to look at that model. If the Soviet Communist Party, which was our model, could collapse like that, it could happen to us too. And he, you might say, again, say he's a filial son to his revolutionary father. He could not imagine that all his father and all his comrades had died for nothing, and just for people to get rich, even the Communist Party. But the survival of the Communist Party as the legitimate ruler of China was to him prime importance. So when he adopted his anti-corruption campaign, it wasn't just to get rid of his enemies. It was actually a genuinely popular move to clean up the corrupt system, and throughout the country, people appreciated him. He was one of the most popular leaders anywhere in the world for his anti-corruption campaign. And I would say the first few years, this was very successful. But fundamentally, corruption cannot be completely removed that way by just through anti-corruption campaign. You must have something more positive. And his positive side was to control, to ask the Communist Party to be disciplined, to return to their roots, to be dedicated to the country's interests, dedicated to the revolutionary ideals and so on. So in order to do that, he needed to control. He needed to actually promote people who would support those ideals and get rid of those people who are corrupted and so on. And in so doing, he began to mass his powers into a very narrow group of people under his leadership. So you can say that he's a dictator, but I don't think he sought to be a dictator. He had no choice. If he wanted to save the Communist Party, if he did not control the party, he couldn't succeed. So as a result, his primary purpose was more political than economic. Although he did not give up his economic ideals that Deng Xiaoping had set up, he's not anti-Deng Xiaoping. He's still accepting the Deng Xiaoping idea of using the capitalist system to make money for China, while at the same time the Communist Party continues to remain the leaders and provide central leadership to ensure that the security and stability within the country is guaranteed to be secure, to be safe. So that creates all kinds of contradictions, you might say, from within. So when he found that the Chinese economy, while it was doing very well, all the Chinese entrepreneurs were getting more and more capitalistic, and they were the ones who were making the money for China. China's economy would not have done as well without the private entrepreneurs. The state-owned enterprises were not doing well at all, and he knew that. But at the same time, he could not allow the capitalists to try and dictate what to do to the economy. So he took the opportunity of Ma Yun to attack him and trying to tell the entrepreneurs, don't you dare interfere with the political goals of the Chinese Communist Party. The political goals are supreme, are primary. You are supposed to make wealth to enable China to be strong and wealthy and so on, but you are not to interfere in politics. That is very fundamentally Chinese. In many ways, that is the original Chinese traditional position of the Quan, very different. The Shi is very different from the Shang, and they must be separate, and the Shang must never be allowed to take part in the politics of rule. That separation is in a way very traditional. It is a return in a way to Chinese roots about the nature of governance. There must be an order, a hierarchy, and the Shi is above that, and you cannot mix up the two. And to that extent, he has intervened in the entrepreneurial world in a way that has upset a lot of the entrepreneurs. They pulled them back. They all became less willing to take risks, and he was making sure that they cannot go beyond a certain point. And if they are too wealthy, they must share their wealth openly. And so all these things have intervened to put a pause to the economy. So it didn't help that they had the COVID thing, because the COVID thing affected the whole world, but it affected and tested the Chinese system in a way which, in a way, exposed them to the dangers of having too much central control and very little left to local enterprise and so on. And as a result of it all, at the end of it all, the controls were even tighter than ever. And I think today they are recovering a bit from that. Xi Jinping is realizing that if this goes on, the economy would falter. And if the economy falters, he cannot achieve his other goals, because you need wealth to do things. As Deng Xiaoping said very wisely a long time ago, socialism that is poor would not be attractive to anybody. Who wants socialism if it only provides poverty? They must provide material wealth, must make people feel better, must make the standard of living, the living style of the whole population better. People must feel that they're getting better. Then socialism would be worth something. So I think he accepts that. He realizes now that if the economy doesn't grow as fast as it used to, that would be a real threat. So he's doing everything he can to keep up that growth rate. But it is a great strain on the system now. How he will recover, I do not know. But you can see that his policies are now relaxing to try and get the entrepreneurs back at work now. But it'll take some time. And essentially the problem is that when people within the country feel that they're not getting it better off, they don't consume. They don't buy and they don't consume. That means the economy within, you can't depend on the local consumers to keep the economy growing. If you depend entirely on exports and other people start clamping down on your exports and your local consumers are not consuming, you have a real problem with your economic growth. So that's very fundamental. At the same time, of course, we know how talented the Chinese people are and how well educated they are, how hardworking they are, how thrifty they are, basically, and how are willing to go through all kinds of difficulties to advance and improve China's security and safety. So you can see that in science and technology, their skills are now as good as anybody else's now. They're really very, very good, extraordinarily capable of turning every scientific advance into technologically challenging things which alarm the rest of the world. At the same time, impress the rest of the world, both at the same time. Similarly, at another level, in terms of finance and economics, they understand it. It's not that they don't understand it. It's a system that puts a limit to what they can do with their understanding of the capitalist system. And that is preventing them from being richer and growing faster and so on. So how to find the right balance? And I think most people still feel that the Chinese people are talented enough, sufficiently technologically advanced to be independently capable of achieving the highest developments, to say that the Chinese can overcome these problems. But it does depend on stability within the country, that within the party itself, within the military system itself, that there is a genuine understanding and, you might say, consensus about what China should be doing. And this is what Xi Jinping is trying to achieve. If you can maintain that general consensus, the vast majority of people are willing to go along with him, then China's chances of overcoming its present difficulties are pretty good.
好，王教授关于中国内部挑战和平衡的这段分析咱们听完了，他没有回避问题，直接点出了当前中国在党的控制和经济活力之间存在的张力。他分析了习主席集权反腐的历史背景和现实考量，也指出了这种强控制对经济，特别是对企业家精神可能带来的抑制作用。同时，他也肯定了中国人民巨大的潜力和韧性。所以，王教授最后那个判断，也就是只要能保持住内部共识，让大多数人愿意跟着走，那中国克服困难的机会就很大，就显得特别关键。这等于是说，未来的路能不能走好，很大程度上取决于能不能处理好控制与活力的关系，能不能凝聚起新的社会共识。好了，今天的分享就到这里，欢迎订阅我的频道，咱们下次见。